Be Attentive, Series 10, Volume 25, November 20th, 1928. Therefore, the most beautiful thing for us, that enraptures us and glorifies us the most, is the soul in whom our divine will reigns, because she alone does not make our love say, "Enough of giving," but we have always something to give, always something to say, and in order to enjoy more, we render her the winner of our very selves. Therefore be attentive, my daughter. If you want everything, let our will reign in you. Volume 25, December 13th, 1928. I too suffered the pain of death, to make all creatures rise again in the pain of my death. Death suffered in the divine order, and in order to fulfill the divine will, produces divine life, so that all creatures might receive this divine life. And after having suffered so many deaths, I wanted to really die. How many goods did my resurrection not produce? It can be said that with my resurrection, all the goods of my redemption rose again, and with it, all goods rose again for creatures, as well as their very life. Therefore be attentive, and let me do. Volume 25, December 21st, 1928. But since man descended from my divine will to live in his own, he lost the echo of his Creator and the model with which to be able to copy our works. Therefore it can be said that in this void there is nothing other than the first steps of man. All the rest is empty. Yet it must be filled, and this is why I await with so much love those who live and must live in my will, who, feeling the power of our echo, and having our models present to them, will hasten to fill this invisible void that I gave with so much love in creation. But do you know what this void is? It is our will. Just as I gave a heaven, a sun, to man's nature, so I gave the heaven, the son of my Fiat, to his soul. And when I see you take your steps after the steps of Adam Innocent, I say, finally, here is the void of my divine will that begins to receive the first conquests and the first works of the creature. Therefore be attentive, and continue always your flight in my divine volition. Volume 25, January 13th, 1929. My daughter, this was the purpose for which I permitted the necessity of the coming of the priest, that you might deposit in them, as a sacred deposit, all the truths that I have spoken to you about my divine Fiat, and that they be attentive and the faithful executors of what I want, that is, that they make the kingdom of my divine will known. Be certain that I would not have permitted their coming, if not for the purpose of fulfilling my great designs over the destiny of the human family. Volume 25, February 10th, 1929. Since the act of creating man was the most beautiful, the most tender, done in an ardor of love, the most intense, it wants to repeat over the creature who lives in my volition the acts that we did in the act of creating man. And oh, how my Fiat puts itself in feast in repeating its acts, because only in the one who lives in it can it have its act of always creating things that it has done as well as new things. In fact, the soul lends to it her nothingness emptied, that my volition uses as the space, in order to create what it wants, almost as it used the void of the universe in order to extend the heavens, to create the sun, to put boundaries to the sea, so that the earth might form its beautiful flowerings. And this is the reason why you make your round in the acts of my fiat, and as though many waves of light pass through your mind, in which you follow and feel, impressed into yourself, like many scenes, the creation, man in the act of being created, the Queen of Heaven in the act of being conceived, the Word descending, and many more acts done by my will. It is the power of my creating fiat that wants to always do, always give, without ever ceasing. Therefore be attentive, for this is about something too great, no less than your having to remain in the act of undergoing the continuous act of my creating will. It will feel it has not completed its work in you if it does not see all of its acts enclosed in your soul as the attestation and triumph of its reigning in you. Volume 25, February 27, 1929. My will has the virtue of enclosing itself, of making itself smaller, of expanding itself. However it wants to make itself, so it does. And while it transforms the creature into itself, it preserves her alive, and giving her all of its tints of beauty, it renders her the dominator and possessor of its divine dominions. Therefore be attentive, my daughter. Recognize the great good of the life of my fiat in you, that while it possesses you, wants to render you the possessor of everything that belongs to it. Volume 25, March 3rd, 1929. My daughter, the sign that a soul possesses my will is her feeling herself the dominator of herself, in such a way that her passions do not dare to move before the light of my fiat. They feel impotent to act, as if they had no life. In fact, the power and sanctity of my will knocks everything down, and over the very miseries of the human will it lays its light, its sanctity, and the most beautiful flowerings, in a way as to admirably convert miseries themselves into fecund and blessed earth, that knows not how to produce thorns any more, but celestial flowers, sweet and mature fruits. And the dominion of this fortunate creature is so great that she feels the owner of God himself, of creatures, and of all created things. She has a charming virtue, such that whoever has the good of knowing her feels so bound as to be unable to be away from her. It is the power of my fiat that enclosed within her charms God, who feels happy to remain enclosed in her. And it charms creatures, because they feel the balsamic fragrance of my divine fiat that brings true peace and true good into their hearts. What would some not do in order to have one word from you that, like life, may descend into their hearts? Therefore be attentive, and always continue your flight in my divine will. Volume 25, March 17th, 1929. Daughter, do not afflict yourself, nor is it necessary that I tell you the way, how and to whom I must manifest if they do not find what was lost, whether to you or to others. What befits you to do, on your part, is to do what you have to do for the kingdom of my divine will. Once you have done the last act that we want from you for the fulfillment of it, your Jesus will not wait a minute to bring you in my arms into the celestial regions. Did I not do the same in the kingdom of redemption? I omitted nothing, and I did everything, so that nothing might be lacking on my part, so that all might receive the good of redemption. And when I did everything, I departed for heaven without waiting for the outcome, leaving the task to the apostles. So it will be with you. Therefore be attentive, and pluck up courage. Volume 25, April 4th, 1929. And just as in the natural order of creation, so in the supernatural order. God is the universal being, and he is one. And because one is the God of all, he gives himself to all. He envelops all. He is everywhere. He does good to all, and is life of all. One is the Virgin, and therefore universal mother and queen of all. One is your Jesus, and therefore my redemption extends everywhere and in a universal way. Everything I did and suffered is at the disposal of all and of each one. One is the little newborn of my divine will, and therefore the whole entire universe will receive, in a universal way, all the goods of the manifestations and knowledges of my divine fiat, that like sacred deposit I have deposited in you, so that more than splendid sun, it may shine its innumerable rays to illuminate the whole entire world. Therefore, everything I tell you contains the universal virtue that will give itself to all and will do good to all. So be attentive and always follow my divine will. Volume 26, April 7th, 1929. Look and listen, my daughter. In the beginning, when Adam and Eve were created, Eden was given to them as their dwelling, in which they were happy and holy. This garden is a simile of that Eden, though it is not as beautiful and flowery. Now, know that I have permitted your coming to this house that is surrounded by a garden, for you to be the new Eve. Not Eve the tempter, who deserved to be put out of happy Eden, but Eve the reformer and the restorer, who will call again the kingdom of my divine will upon earth. Ah, yes, you will be the seed, the cement on the woodworm that the human will has. You will be the beginning of a new happy era. And this is why I centralize in you the joy, the goods, the happiness of the beginning of creation. And I love to repeat the conversations, the lessons, the instructions that I would have given if man had not withdrawn from our divine will. Therefore be attentive, and let your flight in it be continuous. Volume 26, April 16th, 1929. Now you must know that all the manifestations about my divine fiat that I make to you are like many stairs through which my will descends into the soul, to take possession of her, to form its kingdom, while the soul ascends toward heaven, to transport my will from heaven to earth. Therefore it is a great task, and it is unbefitting to lose time, whatever the reason, be it even holy. And you see how I myself eclipse myself within my divine will, so as to give the whole place to it. And if I make my little escapes in coming, it is only in order to deal with, to reorder, and to make you know what belongs to my divine will. Therefore be attentive, and let your flight in it be continuous. Volume 26, April 28, 1929. Therefore, so that man may return to his place of honor and enter once again to operate together with his Creator, and they may amuse themselves together, there are no means other than his re-entering into our Fiat, that it may bring him to us triumphantly, into our arms that are waiting for him, to clasp him tightly within our divine womb, and say to him, "Finally, after 6,000 years, you have come back. You have gone wandering. You have experienced all evils, because there is no good without our Fiat. You have experienced enough, and have touched with your own hand what it means to go out of it. So never go out of it again, and come to rest and enjoy what is yours, because in our volition everything was given to you. Therefore, my daughter, be attentive. We will give you everything if you live always in our Fiat. Our breath will take delight in breathing over you always, to make our joys, our light, our sanctity overflow upon you, and communicate to you the attitude of our works, that we may keep the little daughter, regenerated by our divine will, always together with us." Volume 26, May 9, 1929. When the soul enters into my will to live perennial life in it, the enemy cannot get close. His sight is dazzled by the light of my Fiat, nor is he able to see what the happy creature does in this divine light. Light shields itself from everything. It dominates all. It is intangible. It does not let itself be offended, nor does it offend. And if anyone wants to touch it or clasp it in his hands, with enchanting rapidity it escapes, and almost playfully it sprays him with light. It touches everything. It embraces all, to do good to all, but does not let itself be touched by anyone. Such is my divine will. It encloses the soul within its light, and with its empire it eclipses all evils. And as the soul lives of light, everything converts into light, into sanctity, and perennial peace. So evils get lost and lose their way. Disturbances, temptations, passions, sin, remain all with their legs broken and can no longer walk. Therefore be attentive, and let your living in my Fiat be continuous. Volume 26, May 16, 1929. And when they come to know what will of God means, the great good it can do, and how the only thing that most interests us is to place the rights of our divine Fiat in safety and to make it reign, so as to see everyone happy in our will, of our own happiness, they will no longer be surprised in reading in these papers the great things I have told you and I have done in your soul. On the contrary, they will say, "For a will so holy that has done everything, it was right that there be such a display of graces, and so many sublime teachings in the one in whom it was to make the first deposit of its kingdom, so as to make us comprehend it, love it, and long for it." Therefore be attentive, because this is about giving a divine will its rights, so as to render the work of creation complete. Volume 26, June 27, 1929. My daughter, how great is the sea of my will! It has no beginning and no end. Therefore the littleness of the creature can neither cross it nor embrace it all. However, the one who lives in it finds herself on the way in the center of the sea, as it will never be given to her to go out from within its center, because she will never find either a shore or a boundary of it. On the contrary, in the front and in the back, on the right and on the left, she will find nothing but sea of divine will, and for each act that she emits in it, she is given a divine right back. In fact, since her act has been done within and together with my divine volition, with divine justice, it communicates to the soul the right of the divine light, the right of its sanctity, the right of its beauty, of its goodness, of its love. She lives in the sea of my will by right, not as a stranger, but as the owner, because she has her acts changed into divine rights that have rendered her the conqueror of my divine will. And if you knew how much we delight, how happy we feel, in seeing the littleness of the creature living in the sea of our volition, not as a stranger, but as the owner, not as a servant, but as queen, not as poor, but as immensely rich, and rich in our conquests that she has made in our fiat. Therefore, the one who lives in our divine volition will feel within herself by right the dominion of light, the dominion of sanctity, the dominion of beauty, and of making herself as beautiful as she wants. She has goodness at her disposal, love as the substance of her acts, my divine will as her own life, and completely her own. And all this by divine right, given by our very selves. Therefore be attentive in multiplying your acts in our adorable fiat. Volume 26, July 14, 1929. And since nothing but tenebrous acts can come out of the human will, my will does not want to mix with it, and therefore it stands at attention to be able to form its life, all of light, in the one who freely has given it freedom to let it reign. Therefore its attitude is admirable. It is all eyes so that nothing may escape it, and with unspeakable love, in order to see its life formed in the creature, it makes itself heartbeat for each heartbeat, breath for each breath, work for each work, step for each step. Even over the little trifles of the creature, it runs, it extends, it places the power of its fiat, and creates its vital act in them. Therefore be attentive in receiving its continuous act, because this is about life, and life has need of breath, of continuous heartbeat, and of daily nourishment. Works are done and are put aside, nor do they need to be kept always in hand in order to be works. But life cannot be put aside. If the continuous act ceases, it dies. Therefore the continuous act of my will is necessary for you, you in receiving it, and my will in giving it to you, so that its life in you may live, be formed, and grow with its divine fullness. Volume 26, July 30th, 1929. On the other hand, the one who possesses my divine will has the strength of an adult man, or rather, the divine strength. And if he were told to lift the heavy object, without becoming troubled, he takes it as if it were nothing, while the poor little one would remain crushed under it. If one wants him to sustain a work, he will put himself in feast because of the gain and the profit he will be given. And if one wanted to give him a candy, he would despise it and would say, "Give me the just profit for my work, for I must live from it." See then, the one who has my divine will has sufficient strength for anything. So everything is easy for her. Even suffering, as she feels strong, she looks at it as a new gain. Why are many unable to bear anything, and it seems that a child's weakness follows them? It is the strength of my divine will that is missing. This is the cause of all evils. Therefore be attentive, my daughter, never to go out of my divine will. Volume 26, August 12, 1929. So, who will put to flight the thick darkening of the human will? Who will give back to it the freshness, the beauty of its creation? The acts done in our divine will. They will be light that will dispel the darkness, and heat that, molding it with its heat, will destroy in it all the bad humors that have rendered it ugly. The acts done in my will shall be the rebound to all the human acts done with the human will. This rebound will restore the freshness, the beauty, the order, as the human will was created. Therefore many acts are needed, done by the creature in our divine volition, in order to prepare the counter-poison, the beauty, the freshness, the act opposite to everything evil that the human will has done. Then will our works in creation appear all beautiful. The black speck will disappear, and it will convert into a point, the most luminous one, in the midst of the magnificence of our created works. And our divine will shall take the dominion of all, and will reign on earth as it does in heaven. Therefore be attentive to operate in my divine will, because for each human act, the divine act is needed, that with divine empire knocks down, purifies, and embellishes with good the evil done by the human will. Volume 26, September 4th, 1929. Who can tell you the great good, the most refulgent day that an act of my divine will produces over the creature? With its continuous act, it produces all goods, and happiness in time and eternity. Therefore be attentive, enclose all of yourself within a single act of my divine will. Never go out of it, if you want to live happy and have in your power the life of the light and the day that never sets. An act of my divine will is everything for the creature. With its continuous act that never ceases and never changes, more than tender mother, it keeps she who abandons herself in its act of light clasped to its breast, and nourishing her with light, it raises her as a birth from itself, noble and holy, and it keeps her sheltered within its very light. Volume 26, September 8th, 1929. Now, my daughter, the one who lives in my divine will, renews her rebirth, and redoubles the rebirths for all human generations. When my supreme will lives inside a heart, and lays the fullness of its endless light within it, it centralizes everything and everyone. It does everything. It renews everything. It gives back all that for centuries upon centuries it has not been able to give through the other creatures. So this creature can be called the dawn of the day, the daybreak that calls the sun that gladdens all the earth, illuminates it, warms it, and with its wings of light, more than tender mother, embraces everything, fecundates everything, and with its kiss of light, it gives the most beautiful tints to flowers, the most delicious sweetness to fruits, maturity to all plants. Oh, if my divine will reigned in the midst of creatures, how many prodigies would it not operate in their midst? Therefore be attentive. Everything you do in my divine fiat is a rebirth that you have in it. And to be reborn in it means to be reborn in the divine order, to be reborn in the light, to be reborn in the sanctity, in the love, in the beauty. And in each act of my will, the human will undergoes a death, dying to all evils, and it lives again to all goods. You have reached the end of the Be Attentive series, volumes 25 and 26. Fiat.